I'm Grace, 34 years old, standing frozen as my sister Bethany's champagne glass catches the afternoon sun. Her cruel words echo across the garden where 40 family members turn to stare at me. My teenage daughter Emma's face crumbles beside me as everyone waits for my response. What they don't know is I just lost everything protecting Bethany from bankruptcy 3 months ago, draining my life savings to save her from financial ruin. Before we dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. 3 months before that humiliating picnic, my life looked completely different. I was running a successful marketing firm in downtown Chicago, and we just landed our biggest client ever. The contract was worth $2 million, and my team of 12 was celebrating in our conference room when my phone rang. It was almost midnight, and seeing Bethany's name on the screen made my stomach drop. She only called this late when something was terribly wrong. Her voice was barely a whisper when I answered. "Grace, I need you. Can you come over right now? Please don't tell anyone." I left the celebration immediately, driving through empty streets to her suburban mansion. What I found there changed everything. Bethany was sitting on her marble kitchen floor, surrounded by legal documents, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Her husband, Richard, wasn't home, and she finally told me why. "He's been embezzling from his company," she sobbed, clutching my hands. $500,000, Grace. They found out yesterday. The FBI came to his office. They're pressing charges, and we're going to lose everything. The house is already in foreclosure. The kids' college funds are frozen. I don't know what to do. I held my younger sister as she shook with fear, the same way I'd held her when we were children and our father left. I'd always been her protector, even though she was the one who got all the praise from our mother. As dawn broke through her kitchen windows, I made a decision that would destroy my own life to save hers. "I'll help you," I heard myself saying. "I have money saved. I can liquidate some business assets. We'll figure this out together." Bethany's relief was instant, her arms wrapping around me as she promised to pay me back as soon as they got through this crisis. But there was one condition I insisted on. "Nobody can know about this," I told her firmly. "Not Mom, not the family, nobody. Richard's crime would destroy your reputation and the kids would be bullied at school. We'll say you're renovating the house if anyone asks about money troubles." She agreed immediately, swearing she'd take this secret to her grave. Over the next week, I dismantled the financial security I'd spent 15 years building. I liquidated my retirement accounts, taking massive early withdrawal penalties. I sold my investment properties at a loss in the rushed sales. I even took out loans against my business, putting my company at risk. Every banker and financial advisor tried to talk me out of it, but I couldn't tell them why I needed the money so urgently. The day I transferred $500,000 to Bethany's account, I felt both proud and terrified. Proud that I could be the sister who showed up when it mattered, terrified of what I'd just done to my own future. Bethany cried with gratitude, promising this was just a temporary loan, that she'd make it right once Richard's legal troubles were sorted out. But something changed after that wire transfer cleared. Bethany's grateful texts became less frequent. Her promises to meet for coffee kept getting postponed. When I called to check on her, she'd rush off the phone, claiming she was busy with lawyers or meetings. I told myself she was just stressed, dealing with the shame of her husband's crimes. 6 weeks later, our family's group chat lit up with plans for the annual 4th of July picnic. It would be hosted at our mother's house, as it had been for 20 years. I stared at my bank account, now dangerously low, and wondered how I'd even afford gas to drive there. But this was family tradition, and Emma was excited to see her cousins. "We should go," I told my daughter over breakfast. "Family is important, even when times are tough." Emma nodded, though I caught her glancing at the stack of overdue bills I'd tried to hide under a magazine. At 14, she was too perceptive to miss the signs of our financial strain. I'd been skipping meals to make sure she had enough to eat, shopping at thrift stores for her school clothes, and making excuses for why we couldn't do the things we used to do. The morning of the picnic, I stood in my closet, staring at the same dress I'd worn to the last 3 family gatherings. It was starting to show wear at the seams, but it was the nicest thing I owned that still fit properly. I'd lost weight from the stress, and everything else hung loose on my frame. Emma appeared in the doorway, holding a sundress I'd bought her last summer. "Mom, why don't you wear this? Yellow looks pretty on you." Her kindness made my eyes sting with tears I couldn't afford to shed. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, and promised myself that somehow I'd rebuild everything I'd lost. Bethany would pay me back, I'd save my business, and Emma would never have to worry about money again. As we loaded our contribution to the picnic into my aging Honda, I had no idea that in just a few hours, the sister I'd sacrificed everything for would stand in front of our entire family and humiliate me with a toast that would change everything. The same sister whose secrets I kept, whose children I'd saved from poverty, whose life I'd rescued at the cost of my own, was about to show me exactly what my sacrifice had meant to her. The drive to my mother's house took us through neighborhoods that grew increasingly affluent, each turn reminding me of the financial security I'd given away. Emma sat quietly beside me, her phone dark in her lap because I'd had to cancel our data plan last month. She never complained, but I caught her looking wistfully at her cousin's Instagram stories of summer vacations and shopping trips. We pulled into my mother's circular driveway 20 minutes late because I'd had to stop for gas and count out exact change from the cup holder. The driveway was already packed with luxury vehicles. There was Cousin Melissa's new white Mercedes, Uncle James's Tesla, and, of course, Bethany's Range Rover gleaming in the sunshine. I parked my Honda on the street, hoping no one would notice the dent in the bumper I couldn't afford to fix. "Hold your head high," I whispered to Emma as we walked up the path, our discount store pasta salad balanced in her hands. "We have nothing to be ashamed of." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes as we entered the backyard where the party was already in full swing. The comparisons started immediately. Cousin Melissa floated over in a designer sundress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Grace. Oh my goodness, is that the same dress from Christmas? And Easter? And last year's picnic?" She laughed like it was a delightful joke. Vintage is so in right now. Though usually people mean actual vintage, not just old. I forced a smile, but Emma's face flushed red beside me. Before I could respond, Aunt Dorothy appeared with her usual lack of tact. "Grace, dear, we need to discuss your contribution to Mother's surgery fund. Everyone else has already pledged their amounts, and we're waiting on you." She held up an envelope thick with checks, waving it like a weapon. "Surely your little business can spare something for your grandmother's hip replacement?" My throat tightened as I tried to find words that wouldn't reveal the truth. "I'll need to review my finances first," I managed, hating how weak it sounded. Aunt Dorothy's eyebrows shot up, and she exchanged a meaningful look with Uncle James. "Review your finances?" Uncle James boomed, his voice carrying across the yard. "What's to review? Either you have family loyalty or you don't." When my business was booming, I was the first to write a check. He turned to address the broader group, gesturing with his beer bottle. "Some people forget where they come from once they think they've made it." I wanted to scream that I'd given everything I had to save Bethany, that my review would show negative balances and maxed credit cards. But I'd promised to keep her secret, so I stood there absorbing their judgment while Emma pressed closer to my side. That's when I spotted Bethany across the yard, and my breath caught. She looked radiant in a silk designer outfit I'd never seen before, her hair freshly highlighted, diamonds glittering at her ears. She was laughing with our mother and several cousins, a champagne flute in her manicured hand. When our eyes met, something flickered across her face before she looked away. "Let's find a place to sit," I murmured to Emma, guiding her toward a table in the corner. But we'd barely settled when my mother appeared, her lips pursed in the expression I'd known since childhood. "Grace, darling," she said, though her tone was anything but affectionate. "Bethany was just telling me about her wonderful new investments. Real estate, she says. Beach properties. Isn't it marvelous how some of us manage our money wisely?" She glanced pointedly at my worn dress. You could learn from your sister's example. The irony was so sharp it could have drawn blood. I opened my mouth, then closed it, trapped by my promise. Emma squeezed my hand under the table, and I squeezed back, drawing strength from her touch. The afternoon wore on with 1,000 small cuts. Comments about my old car, questions about why I hadn't traveled lately, observations about Emma wearing hand-me-downs that were actually thrift store finds. Each remark stung, but nothing prepared me for what came next. As the sun began to sink lower, Bethany stood up and clinked her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The chatter died down as everyone turned to face her. She looked like a queen holding court, her smile bright and confident. I wanted to make a toast, she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. To family. To those who've achieved success through hard work and smart choices. She raised her glass higher, and others began to lift theirs in response. To those who contribute to our family's legacy of excellence. Then her eyes found mine, and her smile took on an edge that made my blood run cold. And to the one who always shows up, broke. The words hung in the air like a slap. Because every family needs a cautionary tale, doesn't it? Someone to remind us what happens when we don't make wise decisions. The silence was deafening. I felt every eye in the garden turn to me, some with pity, others with smirking amusement. Emma made a sound beside me, half gasp, half sob, and started to rise from her chair. Mom didn't. She began, her young voice shaking with fury, but I caught her arm. Don't, I whispered, though my own hands were trembling. I wouldn't let my daughter fight my battles, especially when she didn't know the truth. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I picked up my water glass and stood. To family, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And to those who keep secrets. Some more expensive than others. I took a sip while Bethany's smile faltered for just a moment. Then I sat back down, my heart hammering against my ribs. The party resumed with an awkward energy, conversations starting and stopping, glances thrown my way. But I kept my head high, even as I heard Uncle James mutter something about sour grapes and Cousin Melissa's stage whisper about pride going before a fall. What none of them knew was that Bethany's public cruelty had just freed me from my promise of silence. She'd broken the sacred trust between sisters, and now all bets were off. As I watched her accept congratulations for her clever toast, I began to plan exactly how the truth would come out. The moment Bethany's toast ended, my mother materialized at my elbow with the speed of someone who'd been waiting for an opportunity. "Grace, a word," she said, her fingers closing around my arm with surprising strength. Privately. She steered me away from Emma, who looked ready to follow until I shook my head slightly. We ended up behind the garden shed, the same spot where she used to lecture me as a child. Some things never changed. "How dare you embarrass me like this," she hissed, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "Showing up here looking like something from a charity shop, making snide comments about secrets. What has gotten into you?" "Mom, you don't understand what's really happening here," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp gesture. "I understand perfectly. You've always been jealous of Bethany. Even as children, you couldn't stand that she was prettier, more charming, more successful. And now look at you, trying to ruin her moment with your bitter little toast." She shook her head, disappointment etched in every line of her face. "I raised you better than this." The injustice of it burned in my chest. "You raised me to take care of her," I shot back. "Every time she failed, every time she needed help, who did you send?" "Me. When she flunked algebra, I tutored her. When she got pregnant in college, I held her hand at the clinic. When her first business failed, I gave her my savings. And now you throw it all in her face because she's finally successful without you?" My mother's voice dripped with disdain. "This is exactly why I've always had to push you harder, Grace. You lack generosity of spirit. Look at your sister, she's thriving. While you stand here in a 3-year-old dress, acting like the world owes you something." I wanted to scream the truth, to tell her about the money, the sacrifice, the lies. But years of conditioning held my tongue. This was the same woman who'd displayed Bethany's participation trophies while hiding my academic awards, who'd gushed over Bethany's engagement to Richard while asking why I couldn't keep a man. Fighting her was like fighting the tide. "I need to get back to Emma," I said quietly, but she wasn't done. "You'll apologize to your sister before you leave. A proper apology, not one of your half-hearted attempts. And next time, if you can't afford to dress appropriately for family events, perhaps it's better you don't come at all." I found Emma by the dessert table, standing alone while her cousins clustered nearby, whispering and giggling. My heart ached watching her pretend to study the pie selection while clearly trying not to cry. As I approached, cousin Melissa's voice carried over. "I mean, it's just sad, really. My mom says Aunt Grace used to be somebody. Had her own business and everything. Now look at her. And poor Emma, wearing last season's clothes. I'd die if my mom couldn't afford to buy me anything new. Maybe that's why she's so skinny," another cousin added. "My dad says they probably can't afford food." I saw Emma's shoulders shake and quicken my pace, but Melissa wasn't finished. "We should start a charity fund. Cousins for cousins or something. Get Emma some decent clothes so she doesn't embarrass herself at school." "That's enough," I said sharply, and the girls scattered like startled birds. Emma turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, why are they being so mean? What did we do wrong?" Her voice broke my heart. "Is it true what Grandma told Aunt Bethany? That you're a disappointment?" Before I could answer, Aunt Dorothy appeared like a storm cloud. "Grace, we need to settle this surgery fund issue immediately. Your mother is having the procedure next month, and we need full family participation." She pulled out a ledger, running her finger down a list of names and amounts. "Everyone has contributed between $5,000 and $10,000. What will you be pledging?" I felt the blood drain from my face. $10,000. 3 months ago, that would have been easy. Now it might as well have been $1 million. I'll need some time too. Time. Aunt Dorothy's voice rose to performance levels. "Your mother needs surgery and you need time? What kind of daughter are you?" She turned to address the growing audience. Everyone else managed to contribute immediately. But Grace needs time to think about whether her mother's health is worth investing in. "That's not what I meant," I protested, but she was building momentum. "I've been patient with you, Grace. We all have. Watching you drift through life, making poor choices, squandering opportunities. But this is the final straw." She snapped the ledger closed. "I'm removing you from my will. I won't leave money to someone who won't even help their own mother." The gathered relatives murmured their shock and approval in equal measure. I heard someone whisper harsh but fair and another add about time someone said it. Emma pressed against my side, and I could feel her trembling. But Bethany wasn't done with her performance. She glided over, concern painted on her face like makeup. "Oh, Grace, don't look so stricken. We all go through rough patches." She turned to the audience with a tinkling laugh. "Remember my little boutique that failed? At least I knew when to cut my losses. Some people just keep throwing good money after bad, don't they?" "Your boutique didn't fail," I said quietly. "You closed it because Richard got promoted and you didn't want to work anymore." Her eyes flashed dangerously. "Well, at least I had a husband to support me. Not all of us are too proud to accept help when we need it." She touched my arm with false sympathy. "There's no shame in admitting failure, Grace. Look at me," I bounced back. "Invested wisely. Made smart choices. Well, we can all see where your choices led. Mom's business isn't a failure." Emma burst out, her young voice fierce. "She works harder than anyone I know. She's just going through a tough time because..." She stopped, looking at me uncertainly. "Because what, sweetie?" Bethany asked, her voice honeyed poison. "Because she made poor decisions? Because she doesn't know how to manage money? It's okay, we all know the truth. Your mom has always been too proud to admit when she needs help." The irony of that statement nearly choked me. I'd given her everything, stripped my life bare to save hers, and she stood there painting me as too proud to accept help. Around us, relatives nodded sympathetically, completely taken in by her performance. "Such a shame," someone murmured. "Grace had such potential." "This is what happens when you don't listen to good advice," another added. "Poor Emma. suffering for her mother's pride. Each comment was another wound, but the worst was yet to come. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing just a moment to breathe, to think, to stop myself from screaming the truth in front of everyone. But as I passed the kitchen window, Bethany's voice floated out, and I froze. She was on the phone laughing. No, it was perfect. You should have seen her face when I made the toast. Broke. And everyone just ate it up. A pause. Of course, she won't say anything. She's too proud to admit I played her. $500,000, and she actually believed I needed it for Richard's mess. As if I'd stay with him after that scandal. The divorce lawyer says I'll get everything, plus what Grace gave me is already in my separate account. The beach house closing is next week. My knees nearly buckled. The beach house. She'd used my sacrifice to buy a beach house while I couldn't afford groceries. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. The avoiding my calls, the new clothes, the diamonds. She'd been planning this all along. The best part, Bethany continued, still laughing. She promised not to tell anyone about Richard. So she just has to stand there and take it while I play the successful sister. God, Grace always was too easy to manipulate. Remember in high school when I convinced her to take the blame for my cheating scandal? She nearly lost her scholarship, but she did it anyway. Some people never learn. I stood there shaking, my world tilting off its axis. Everything I'd believed about family, about sacrifice, about protecting the people you loved, crumbled around me. But as the shock faded, something else took its place. Fury, clean and bright and purifying. My sister had just made a fatal mistake. She'd gloated too soon, revealed too much, and forgotten that even the most patient person has a breaking point. As I stood in my mother's hallway, listening to her laugh about my destruction, I made a decision. The truth was going to come out. All of it. And when it did, Bethany would learn that there are some betrayals that can't be forgiven, some secrets that won't stay buried, and some sisters who refuse to be victims anymore. I walked back outside with my spine straight and my decision made. The pile-on might continue for now, but I knew something they didn't. Every cruel word, every public humiliation, every moment of shame they heaped on me was building toward a reckoning they never saw coming. I stood in the hallway for another moment, letting Bethany's words replay in my mind, each syllable hardening my resolve. When I finally stepped back outside, the party atmosphere felt different. I wasn't the same person who'd absorbed their cruelty in silence. Now I was someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The first person to approach me wasn't who I expected. Uncle Robert, the black sheep of our family who'd been quietly nursing a beer in the corner all afternoon, intercepted me before I could return to Emma. Robert was the one who'd refused to go into the family real estate business, choosing forensic accounting instead. My mother had barely spoken to him in years. Grace, he said quietly, walk with me to the parking lot. We need to talk. Something in his expression made me follow without question. Emma was safe with the desserts, pointedly ignoring her cousins, and I needed whatever Robert had to say. We stopped beside his practical sedan, a stark contrast to the luxury vehicles surrounding it. I know about Bethany's husband, he said without preamble. About the embezzlement. About what you did. My mouth fell open, but he held up a hand. I'm a forensic accountant, remember? Richard's company hired my firm to trace the stolen funds. But how did you know about my involvement? I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Robert's expression was grim. The money trail, Grace. $500,000 suddenly appearing in Bethany's accounts right after Richard's crimes were discovered? It wasn't hard to piece together, especially when I cross-referenced it with public records showing you liquidating assets. He paused, studying my face. What I don't understand is why you haven't said anything while she's destroying you in there. I promise to keep it secret, I said weakly. To protect her reputation, the kids. Protect her? Robert's laugh was bitter. Grace, she's been spreading lies about you for months. I've been documenting everything for my own reasons, but I think you need to see this. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through screenshots. Bethany's been telling everyone you borrowed money from her. Look. The emails were there in black and white. Messages to our cousins claiming I'd begged her for loans. Text threads with our mother painting me as financially irresponsible. Social media posts about family members who take advantage that everyone would have understood were about me. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of character assassination. There's more, Robert said gently. The beach house she's buying? It's not in her name alone. She's put it in a trust to hide it from Richard in the divorce. A divorce she filed for 2 months ago, by the way. She never intended to save her marriage or protect her kids from scandal. She used you. The divorce is already in progress? I felt stupid for being shocked at this point. Almost final. And here's the kicker, she's claiming financial hardship in the proceedings. Saying Richard left her with nothing, that she's struggling to make ends meet. Meanwhile, he showed me another document. She paid cash for a $700,000 beach property. Cash that came from you. I leaned against his car, trying to process the magnitude of her deception. Why are you telling me this? We've never been close, Robert. His smile was sad. Because I know what it's like to be the family scapegoat. They did the same to me when I refused to join the family business. Painted me as a failure, a disappointment. But I built my own success, and I learned something important. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. And Bethany has shown you exactly how much loyalty she has. I can't prove any of this, I said, though my mind was already racing. It's my word against hers. That's where you're wrong. Robert opened his car door and pulled out a folder. I've been building a file. See, Bethany made one crucial mistake. She used the same lawyer for her beach house purchase that Richard used for some of his shell companies. A lawyer my firm has been investigating. We have copies of everything. The folder contained copies of deeds, bank transfers, emails between Bethany and her lawyer discussing how to hide assets. Most damning was a message where she explicitly mentioned the money from Grace and how to keep it separate from marital assets. My sacrifice, documented in legal terms as a tool for her deception. She's been playing everyone I breathed. Not just me. Oh, it gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. Robert showed me more documents. She's been taking money from other family members too. Small amounts, loans she's never repaid, investments in fake business ventures. You were just the biggest score. Why hasn't anyone noticed? Because she's careful. A few thousand here and there, always with sob stories, always with promises to repay. But it adds up. I estimate she's taken close to $1 million from various family members over the past 5 years, including what you gave her. I thought about Aunt Dorothy's surgery fund, Uncle James's boasts about his generosity, Cousin Melissa's casual wealth. How many of them had helped Bethany over the years? How many had enabled her con games without realizing it? What do I do with this? I asked, clutching the folder. Robert's smile was sharp. Whatever you want. But if I were you, I'd stop protecting someone who's actively destroying you. That toast? That wasn't just cruel, Grace. That was calculated. She needs you to look like a failure so no one questions where your money went. We walked back toward the party, my mind spinning with possibilities. As we approached the garden, I saw Emma still by the dessert table, but now she was surrounded by cousins. My heart clenched until I realized she wasn't cowering. She was standing straight, chin up, facing them down. My mom is worth 10 of any of you, she was saying, her young voice carrying clearly. She's kind and honest and works harder than anyone I know. So, what if we don't have money right now? At least we have integrity. One of the older cousins sneered. Integrity doesn't pay bills, Emma. Your mom's a loser who can't even contribute to Grandma's surgery. She would if she could, Emma shot back. You don't know what she's dealing with. You don't know what she's sacrificed. Emma, I called softly, and she turned to me with tears in her eyes, but steel in her spine. My daughter, my warrior, defending me when I couldn't defend myself. It's okay, sweetheart. Let's go sit down. But Robert had other ideas. Actually, why don't we all sit together? He suggested loudly enough for others to hear. It's been too long since I've caught up with my favorite niece and her daughter. The surprise on people's faces was almost comical. Robert hadn't voluntarily socialized with the family in years. As we settled at a table in full view of everyone, Bethany appeared with my mother in tow. Grace, Mother has something to say to you about your earlier behavior, Bethany announced, but Robert cut her off. Bethany. Just the person I wanted to see. I was telling Grace about that beautiful beach house you're buying. Gorgeous property. 700,000, wasn't it? Cash purchase. His tone was innocent, but Bethany's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. No? Must be a different Bethany Chen who's closing on a Malibu property next week. My mistake. He turned to my mother. Aunt Linda, you must be so proud. Both your daughters doing so well. Grace with her successful business and Bethany with her real estate investments. My mother's eyes narrowed. Grace's business is struggling, Robert. We all know that. Look at her. Struggling businesses don't usually have $2 million contracts, Robert mused. But I suppose sacrifices must be made for family sometimes. Right, Grace? I met his eyes and saw the encouragement there. This was my opening, my chance to start revealing the truth. Around us, conversations were stopping as people sensed drama unfolding. Yes, I said clearly. Family sacrifices. Like when you give everything to help someone, only to have them use it for beach houses instead of saving their home from foreclosure. The silence was electric. Bethany's face cycled through emotions as panic, rage, and calculation warred for dominance. My mother looked between us, confusion replacing her earlier certainty. What are you talking about? She demanded. I opened my mouth to answer, but Bethany beat me to it. She's obviously having some kind of breakdown, she said quickly. The stress of failure does things to people. Maybe we should call someone. The only person who needs calling is a lawyer, Robert said conversationally. Probably a good one, considering the fraud charges that could be filed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Grace, why don't you tell everyone about that $500,000? Emma gasped beside me, the pieces finally clicking for her. Mom, is that why you? I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her touch. The folder Robert had given me sat on the table between us, a bomb waiting to explode. Around us, 40 family members leaned in, sensing that something momentous was about to happen. Yes, I said simply. Let me tell you all a story about family, sacrifice, and betrayal. Let me tell you what really happened 3 months ago, and why I'm standing here broke, while my sister buys beach houses with my money. Bethany's carefully constructed facade began to crack. You promised, she hissed. You swore you wouldn't tell. I looked her straight in the eye. This sister I'd protected my whole life, and smiled. Yes, I did. But that was before you stood up in front of our entire family and humiliated me. Before you laughed on the phone about how easy I was to manipulate. Before you turned my sacrifice into a weapon to destroy me. I picked up the folder. So let's talk about promises, Bethany. And let's talk about exactly which ones you've broken. The folder sat between us like a loaded gun, and I could see Bethany calculating her options. She'd always been quick on her feet, able to spin any situation to her advantage. But she'd never faced me when I had nothing left to lose and evidence in my hands. I think we should continue this privately, my mother said, her voice tight with the kind of social embarrassment she feared most. This is neither the time nor the place. Actually, this is exactly the time and place, I said, standing up. The entire family was watching now, their barbecue plates forgotten. Since Bethany felt comfortable making a public toast about my financial situation, I think it's only fair to discuss hers. I turned to address the gathered relatives, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. 3 months ago, Bethany called me in tears. Her husband Richard had been caught embezzling $500,000 from his company. They were going to lose everything, she said. The house, the cars, the kids' college funds. She begged me to help. Grace, stop, Bethany warned, but I was beyond stopping. I liquidated everything I had. My retirement accounts, my investment properties, took loans against my business. I gave her $500,000 to save her family from ruin. She promised to pay me back, begged me to keep it secret to protect her reputation. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And I did. I kept that secret while you all judged me for being broke. While you questioned my contributions to family funds. While you mocked my old dress and my daughter's thrift store clothes. Aunt Dorothy's face had gone pale. Is this true, Bethany? But I wasn't done. Here's the interesting part. Bethany filed for divorce 2 months ago. She never intended to save her marriage or protect her children from scandal. She used my money to buy a $700,000 beach house in Malibu, putting it in a trust to hide it from the divorce proceedings. The yard erupted in shocked voices, but Robert's calm tone cut through the chaos. I can confirm all of this. My firm was hired to investigate Richard's embezzlement. The paper trail is very clear. He pulled out his phone. In fact, I have the listing right here. Beautiful property. Ocean views. Closes next week. You're lying. Bethany's voice was shrill now, desperate. This is just Grace being bitter about her failures. She's making up stories. Am I? I opened the folder, pulling out copies of bank transfers. Here's the wire transfer from my account to yours. $500,000, dated 3 months ago. Here's the purchase agreement for the beach house, showing a cash offer for $700,000. Would you like to explain where the other $200,000 came from? My mother snatched the papers, her reading glasses shaking as she studied them. This can't be right. Bethany, you told me Grace had borrowed money from you. You showed me texts. Fake texts are easy to create, Robert said helpfully. But bank records don't lie. Neither do property deeds or divorce filings. Would anyone like to see those too? Uncle James, who'd been so vocal about family loyalty earlier, stood up slowly. Bethany, I lent you $30,000 last year for Emma's medical emergency. You said she needed surgery. And I gave you $20,000 for the investment opportunity that was guaranteed to double, Cousin Melissa added, her voice growing cold. You said you'd pay me back with interest in 6 months. That was 8 months ago. One by one, family members began speaking up. $10,000 here, $15,000 there, all given to Bethany for various emergencies and opportunities. The medical procedures that never happened, the investments that never materialized, the crises that resolved themselves mysteriously after checks were written. She got $50,000 from me, Aunt Dorothy whispered, sinking into a chair. For her children's education fund after Richard's gambling problem last year. Bethany's facade cracked completely. You don't understand. Richard was bleeding us dry. I had to protect myself and the children. I had to build a nest egg. With other people's money? I asked quietly. With my life savings? With Aunt Dorothy's retirement funds? With Cousin Melissa's inheritance? It's not like any of you were really using it. Bethany snapped, her true colors finally showing. Dorothy has millions. Melissa spends more on handbags than I asked for. And you? She turned on me with venom. You always acted so superior with your little business, your perfect daughter, your martyrdom complex. It was about time you actually sacrificed something real. Emma stood up beside me, her young face fierce. My mom sacrificed everything for you. We can't afford food some weeks because she gave you everything. I watch her skip meals so I can eat. She sold her car and takes the bus to work. We might lose our house. All because she tried to save you. The impact of Emma's words was visible on every face. My teenage daughter, defending me with truths I'd tried to hide from her, showing more courage than I'd had in months. Her pain, her anger, her fierce love, it all poured out in a torrent that silenced even Bethany. Is that true, Grace? My mother asked, her voice small. Are you not eating? It doesn't matter, I said, though Emma's revelation had left me exposed. What matters is that Bethany has been systematically defrauding this family for years. Using our love, our trust, our desire to help against us. And when I gave her everything I had, she didn't just take the money. She set out to destroy my reputation so no one would ask questions. The toast, Cousin Melissa breathed. You called her broke in front of everyone to discredit her before she could reveal what you'd done. Exactly. I pulled out more papers. These are emails Bethany sent to various family members over the past 3 months, painting me as irresponsible, a failure, someone who borrowed money from her. She's been building a narrative to protect herself while planning to let me take the fall. My mother stood slowly, the papers trembling in her hands. For the first time in my life, I saw her look at Bethany without the glowing admiration that had defined their relationship. You stole from your sister? From your family? And then you stood there and mocked her for being poor. It's not stealing, Bethany protested. They gave me the money willingly. Under false pretenses, Robert interrupted. That's fraud, Bethany. Criminal fraud. Any prosecutor would have a field day with this evidence. The word prosecutor sent a visible shiver through the group. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was potential criminal charges, lawsuits, legal consequences that could destroy Bethany's carefully constructed life. Where's Richard? I asked suddenly. Your husband who was supposedly devastated by his embezzlement charges? The one whose legal troubles required my life savings. Bethany's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But she didn't need to answer because at that moment, Richard himself walked around the corner of the house, clearly drunk, a beer in his hand. Baby, where'd you go? He slurred, then stopped as he took in the scene. 40 pairs of accusatory eyes, papers spread on tables, his wife looking like a cornered animal. What's going on? Richard, I said pleasantly. We were just discussing your embezzlement charges. The ones that required $500,000 to resolve. How's that going, by the way? He blinked in confusion. What embezzlement? I got fired for that thing with the secretary, but... He trailed off as Bethany made frantic shushing motions. Wait, is this about the money you got from? His eyes found me. Oh shit. You told them I was embezzling? Bethany, what the hell? The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place for everyone. There had been no embezzlement. No FBI, no criminal charges, no threat of losing everything. Just Richard's garden-variety infidelity and a wife who saw an opportunity to cash in on her family's sympathy and trust. You made it all up, I said, almost admiring the audacity of it. Every single bit. You research everyone's weak points, create a crisis designed to trigger their sympathy, then pocket the money while playing the victim. The medical emergencies that never happened, Uncle James said slowly. The investment opportunities that never existed. The crises that always resolved right after the checks cleared. 5 years, Robert added. My conservative estimate is that she's taken close to $1 million from this family over 5 years. Grace was just the biggest score. Bethany looked around wildly, seeking any ally, any sympathetic face. But she found only shock, anger, and disgust. Even our mother, who had babied and protected her for 40 years, looked at her like a stranger. The beach house, Aunt Dorothy said suddenly. You're buying it with our money. With Grace's sacrifice, with my retirement funds, with all of our trust transformed into your luxury. I earned that house. Bethany screamed, finally dropping all pretense. Do you know what it's like being the pretty one, the charming one, the one everyone expects to be perfect? I've been performing for this family my whole life. Smiling, flattering, making you all feel important. I earned every penny through years of being exactly what you wanted me to be. You earned it by being a con artist, I said quietly. By being a thief who preyed on the people who loved you most. And you earned your poverty by being a self-righteous fool, she spat back. You think you're so noble, so sacrificing. But you're just stupid, Grace. Too stupid to see an opportunity, too weak to take what you deserve, too pathetic to be anything more than everyone's doormat. Maybe I agreed, surprising her. Maybe I was all of those things. But I'm not anymore. Because you taught me something valuable, Bethany. You taught me that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we protect most fiercely. And that the only way to stop being a victim is to stop accepting victimhood. I gathered the papers, the evidence of her crimes, and stood tall despite my thrift store dress and empty bank account. The family can decide what to do with this information. Press charges, file civil suits, or just cut you off completely. But I'm done protecting you. I'm done keeping your secrets. And I'm done letting you destroy me to hide your own corruption. Emma took my hand, and together we turned to leave. But my mother's voice stopped us. Grace, she called, and when I turned, there were tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For everything. For never seeing who you really were, for always taking her side, for failing you as a mother. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at this woman who'd shaped so much of my pain, who'd created the dynamic that allowed Bethany to flourish while I withered. But I also saw genuine remorse, possibly for the first time in our relationship. Maybe, I said honestly. But not today. Today, Emma and I are going home. We have a life to rebuild, and it starts with choosing who deserves to be in it. As we walked toward my old Honda, I heard the explosion of voices behind us. Accusations, demands for money back, threats of legal action. Bethany's kingdom was crumbling, built as it was on lies and stolen dreams. But I didn't look back. I'd spent too many years looking backward, trying to save someone who saw my love as weakness and my sacrifice as stupidity. Now it was time to look forward, to rebuild, to show Emma that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in revenge, but in revelation. In bringing truth to light and letting consequences fall where they may. The counterattack was complete. Not through cruelty or public humiliation, but through simple, devastating honesty. The same honesty Bethany had mocked as weakness had become the weapon that destroyed her carefully constructed lies. As we drove away, Emma squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mom. And just so you know, I'd rather have a mother who sacrifices too much for love than one who sacrifices everyone else for money." Her words were worth more than all the money Bethany had stolen. Because in the end, that's what I'd kept and she'd lost, the ability to look at ourselves in the mirror and like who we see. And that's something no amount of money can buy or steal. We had barely reached the car when Bethany's voice cut through the evening air like a desperate shriek. "You can't leave. You can't just drop a bomb like that and walk away." She was running after us in her designer heels, mascara streaming down her face. Richard stumbled behind her, still clutching his beer and looking bewildered. I paused with my hand on the car door, Emma already safely inside. "What more is there to say, Bethany? The truth is out. Finally. You've ruined everything." She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in. "That money was mine. I earned it by putting up with this family, by being perfect, by giving them what they wanted to see. You earned it by lying," I said, removing her hand. "By manipulating people who loved you." The family had followed us out, forming a semicircle in the driveway. Uncle James looked ready to explode. Aunt Dorothy was openly weeping. My mother stood frozen, as if her entire worldview had shattered. Which, I supposed, it had. "Bethany," Uncle James said, his voice dangerously low. "The $30,000 I gave you. My daughter couldn't go to her first-choice college because I'd given you her tuition money for your fake emergency. She's at community college because of you. And my mortgage," Cousin Melissa added, her voice shaking. "I'm 3 months behind because I gave you my savings. My husband doesn't even know. I've been hiding the notices, trying to figure out how to tell him we might lose the house." One by one, the dominoes fell. Each revelation showed the true cost of Bethany's con. It wasn't just money she'd stolen. It was dreams, security, marriages strained by financial secrets, retirements postponed, medical procedures delayed. The scope of destruction was breathtaking. "But Grace gave me the most," Bethany said desperately, as if this somehow vindicated her. $500,000. She could afford it with her big fancy business. "Are you insane?" Emma's voice rang out from the car. My quiet, reserved daughter got out and faced her aunt with fury I'd never seen before. "We're about to lose our house. Mom hasn't bought new clothes in 2 years. She walks to work in the rain because she can't afford to fix the car. She pretends she's not hungry at dinner so I can have seconds. And you stand there in your designer outfit saying she could afford it." Richard finally seemed to process what was happening. "Wait, you told everyone I embezzled money? Bethany, what the hell? I lost my job for sleeping with Carol, not." "Jesus Christ, you're sick." "Shut up." Bethany screamed at him. "You're useless anyway. Couldn't even cheat properly without getting caught. At least your stupidity gave me an opportunity." "An opportunity to destroy our family?" My mother finally spoke, her voice broken. "To turn us against each other? To humiliate your sister who gave you everything." Bethany laughed, high and hysterical. "You want to talk about family? You created this. You and your golden child syndrome, always pitting us against each other. Grace was the smart one, I was the pretty one. Grace got grades, I got pageant crowns. You think I didn't notice how you looked at me? Like a prize pony, something to show off, but never really respect. So you decided to con us all? Robert asked drily. Interesting therapy choice. I decided to get what I was owed. Bethany's carefully styled hair was coming undone, making her look wild. Do you know what it's like being the family success story when you're actually drowning? Richard's affairs, his gambling, his inability to keep a job? But I couldn't let anyone know because I was Bethany, the perfect one, the one who married well and lived beautifully. So you chose to destroy Grace instead, Aunt Dorothy said quietly. The one person who would have helped you without judgment if you'd just told the truth. The truth? Bethany laughed bitterly. The truth is that Grace has always been the real golden child. Everyone loves tragic, hard-working Grace. Poor Grace who sacrifices so much. Saint Grace who takes care of everyone. Do you know how sick I am of hearing about wonderful Grace? I stared at my sister, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. All these years, I'd thought she had everything, the approval I craved, the love that seemed so effortless. But she'd been drowning in her own prison of perfection, and instead of reaching for help, she'd chosen to pull others under with her. You could have just talked to me, I said softly. I would have helped you without the lies. I would have understood. No. She was fully crying now, ugly sobs that ruined her perfect makeup. You would have pitied me. Poor Bethany can't keep her husband faithful, can't maintain her lifestyle, can't be perfect anymore. I couldn't stand to see that look in your eyes, the same look you're giving me now. This isn't pity, I said honestly. It's disappointment. And grief for the sister I thought I had. Richard had pulled out his phone during the confrontation, and now he looked up with genuine alarm. Bethany, what's this email from the divorce lawyer about hiding assets? What beach house? We don't have money for a beach house. The final shoe dropped. Bethany spun to face him. There is no we, you idiot. I filed for divorce months ago. That's my beach house, bought with my money. With Grace's money, Robert corrected. And the family's money. Which makes it proceeds of fraud. Which means it can be seized in both criminal and civil proceedings. The word criminal finally seemed to penetrate Bethany's hysteria. She went very still, her tear-streaked face calculating. You can't prove fraud. They gave me the money willingly. Based on lies you told them, Robert said patiently. I've been recording this entire conversation, by the way. You've admitted to creating false emergencies, lying about your husband's legal troubles, and deliberately defrauding family members. That's textbook fraud. You recorded. You can't do that. Bethany lunged toward him, but Uncle James caught her arm. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording. And I very much consent. Robert held up his phone. Would anyone like me to replay the part where she admitted to making everything up? The complete unraveling happened in stages. First, Bethany tried bargaining. She'd pay everyone back, she promised. Just give her time to sell the beach house. But Cousin Melissa pointed out that she'd been promising to pay people back for years. Empty promises from a serial liar meant nothing. Then came threats. She'd reveal everyone's secrets, she claimed. All the gossip shared over the years, the affairs and addictions and family scandals. But Aunt Dorothy just laughed wearily. What secrets, dear? That James had an affair 10 years ago? His wife knows. That I take antidepressants? I'm not ashamed. You've confused secrets with ammunition, and you're shooting blanks. Finally, there was blame. This was Grace's fault for being too trusting. The family's fault for being so gullible. Society's fault for putting pressure on women to be perfect. Everyone's fault but hers. It was pitiful to watch, this complete dissolution of the poised, perfect woman who'd started the afternoon with a cruel toast. I need the bathroom, Bethany said suddenly, and before anyone could stop her, she'd pushed past the crowd and run back into the house. Richard started to follow, but my mother stopped him. Let her go, she said tiredly. What more can she do? We found out moments later when we heard a car engine start. Bethany's Range Rover peeled out of the driveway, narrowly missing Uncle James's Tesla. She was gone, leaving behind a designer purse, a confused husband, and a family in ruins. Should we call the police? Cousin Melissa asked. She can't just run. She won't get far, Robert said calmly. I took the liberty of notifying my contacts at the district attorney's office during the party. They're very interested in a fraud case of this magnitude. They'll be watching for her. The family stood in the driveway, processing the devastation. Years of carefully maintained relationships, hierarchies, and dynamics had crumbled in a single afternoon. But sometimes, I reflected, destruction was necessary for rebuilding. Grace, my mother approached hesitantly. The surgery fund. I understand if you can't. I'll contribute what I can when I can, I said firmly. But first, I need to rebuild my life. The life I destroyed saving someone who saw my love as weakness. She nodded, tears still flowing. I failed you. I see that now. All those years, pushing you to take care of her, praising her achievements while ignoring your sacrifices. I created this dynamic. We all played our parts, I said, too exhausted for anger. But we can choose different roles going forward. As Emma and I finally drove away, I saw the family in my rearview mirror. Some were comforting each other. Others were on phones, likely calling lawyers or spouses. Uncle James was gesturing wildly, probably calculating his losses. But Robert stood apart, giving me a small salute as we left. The unraveling was complete, but it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. The start of a family restructuring itself around truth instead of appearances, merit instead of manipulation. It would be messy and painful, but it would be real. And for the first time in my life, real was all I wanted. The drive home was quiet except for Emma's occasional sniffle. I reached over and squeezed her hand, my brave girl who'd stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. I'm sorry you had to see all that, I said as we pulled into our modest apartment complex. I'm not, Emma replied firmly. I'm glad the truth came out. I'm glad everyone knows what you sacrificed. And I'm glad Aunt Bethany can't hurt you anymore. She paused, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Are we going to be okay, Mom? Financially, I mean. I parked the car and turned to face her. Honestly, it's going to be tough for a while. But we'll figure it out together. We always do. Her smile was wobbly but real, and that was enough for now. That night, neither of us could sleep. We sat at our small kitchen table, drinking tea and talking about everything that had happened. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing with messages. Word had spread beyond the party attendees, and the extended family network was in uproar. I put the phone on silent and focused on my daughter. You know what the funny thing is? Emma said, wrapping her hands around her mug. I used to be jealous of my cousins. Their clothes, their vacations, their perfect lives. But now I realize we have something they don't. What's that? I asked, though I thought I knew. Integrity, she said simply. And each other. That's worth more than beach houses and designer clothes. The next morning brought a stream of visitors. First was Uncle Robert, carrying coffee and donuts. Figured you might need breakfast, he said, settling at our table like he belonged there. Also, updates. Bethany was picked up by the police last night. She made it about 50 miles before they stopped her. Is she in jail? Emma asked wide-eyed. Released on bail, which Richard stupidly posted despite everything. But she's been charged with multiple counts of fraud. The DA is taking this very seriously. He pulled out a tablet. More importantly, I've been working with a colleague who specializes in asset recovery. That beach house? It's going to be frozen and likely liquidated to pay back victims. I don't want her beach house, I said quickly. I just want to move forward. It's not about want, it's about justice, Robert said gently. You're the primary victim here. $500,000, Grace. That money could rebuild your business, secure Emma's education, give you both the life you deserve. The second visitor was more surprising, my mother, looking older than I'd ever seen her. She stood at my door uncertainly, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. I know I have no right to be here, she began. I stepped aside to let her in. Whatever our issues, she was still my mother. She looked around our small apartment, taking in the secondhand furniture, the bare walls, the obvious signs of financial struggle. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. How long have you been living like this? She whispered. 3 months, I said simply. Since I gave Bethany everything. She sank onto our worn couch, the casserole dish forgotten on the coffee table. I did this. I created this monster. Always comparing you girls, always making everything a competition. I thought I was motivating you both, but I was just. I was a terrible mother. You were the mother you knew how to be, I said, surprising myself with the lack of bitterness in my voice. Maybe I was just too tired for anger. Your mother did the same to you and Aunt Dorothy, didn't she? The pretty one and the smart one. She looked up, startled. How did you know? Because patterns repeat until someone breaks them. Well, I'm breaking them. Emma will never feel like she has to compete for my love or prove her worth through achievements or appearance. The cycle ends here. My mother nodded slowly. Can you teach me? How to be better? I know it might be too late for us, but maybe I could try. Emma, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came and sat beside her grandmother. It's never too late to try, she said, wise beyond her years. But you have to mean it. Really mean it, not just feel guilty for a few weeks and then go back to old patterns. Over the next weeks, our small apartment became a hub of activity. Aunt Dorothy arrived with a check, insisting it was a business investment, not charity. I've seen your work, Grace. You're brilliant at what you do. Consider this seed money to rebuild. Uncle James, humbled by his own losses to Bethany's schemes, offered to connect me with his business contacts. The most surprising visitor was Cousin Melissa. She came with her husband, both looking sheepish. We owe you an apology, she said. Not just for the party, but for years of judgment and assumptions. You were struggling because you'd helped Bethany, and we mocked you for it. That's unforgivable. Not unforgivable, I corrected. Just human. We all played the roles we were assigned in this family drama. Now we get to write new ones. 3 months later, my life looked dramatically different. The legal proceedings against Bethany were moving forward, with Robert's meticulous documentation making the case airtight. The beach house had been frozen and was being sold, with proceeds to be distributed among her victims. I would recover most of my money, though it would take time. But I hadn't waited for the legal resolution to rebuild. With Aunt Dorothy's investment and the connections Uncle James provided, I'd restarted my marketing firm. Smaller, leaner, but smarter. Emma worked with me after school, learning the business and showing a natural talent for design. The family dynamics had shifted completely. The annual Christmas gathering was smaller that year. Bethany's absence felt but not mourned. Richard had divorced her and moved away, taking their children to start fresh. Bethany herself was awaiting trial, living with a distant relative who was the only person willing to take her in. Do you ever feel sorry for her? Emma asked one evening as we worked late in our new office, a modest but clean space that felt like a fresh start. I considered the question carefully. I feel sorry for the person she could have been, I said finally. If she'd used her intelligence and charm for good instead of manipulation. If she'd seen family as support instead of marks to con. But I don't feel sorry for facing consequences. That's just justice. The truth was more complex, though. Late at night, I sometimes remembered the little sister who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd held my hand on the first day of school, who'd cried on my shoulder when boys broke her heart. That Bethany was gone, if she'd ever really existed outside my protective imagination. 6 months after the picnic that changed everything, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Bethany, forwarded through her lawyer. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won. Grace, it began in her familiar handwriting. I know you'll probably tear this up, and I don't blame you. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to acknowledge the harm I've caused, not for forgiveness, but for honesty. You were right about everything. I was drowning in my perfect life, and instead of asking for help, I chose to drag others down with me. Especially you, the one person who would have helped without judgment. I turned your love into a weapon against you because I couldn't stand that you were genuinely good while I was pretending. I won't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I won't make excuses because there are none. I just wanted you to know that in therapy, when they ask me to name someone I admire, I always say you. The sister who sacrificed everything for family, who faced humiliation with dignity, who rebuilt from ashes while I crumbled from abundance. Take care of Emma. She's lucky to have you. Bethany. I read it twice, then showed it to Emma. What do you think? I asked. She thought carefully, then said, I think people can change, but change requires more than words. Maybe someday she'll do the work to become someone better. But that's her journey, not ours. My daughter's wisdom continued to amaze me. I filed the letter away, neither forgiving nor forgetting, just acknowledging. The year ended with my business thriving, Emma accepted early to her dream college with a full scholarship, and our family slowly healing from the wounds Bethany had inflicted. But more than that, it ended with truth. No more secrets, no more enabling, no more performing roles that destroyed us from within. At the next 4th of July picnic, exactly 1 year after everything fell apart, I arrived in a reliable car I'd bought with my own earned money. Emma wore a dress she'd picked out and paid for with her part-time job earnings. We brought homemade pie and genuine smiles. Toast time. Uncle James called out, raising his beer. The family gathered, and I saw some tense at the memory of last year's devastating toast. But it was my mother who stood, raising her glass of lemonade. To family, she said, her voice strong. To the hard truths that set us free. To the courage to change. And to Grace, who showed us that real strength isn't in perfection but in persistence. Who taught us that sacrifice without enabling is love, and that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face their own consequences. Everyone drank, even those still stinging from their losses to Bethany's schemes. Because in the end, we'd all learned something valuable. That family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining appearances. It's about showing up honestly, supporting each other through consequences, and choosing love that strengthens rather than enables. As the sun set over the gathering, Emma leaned against me. You know what, Mom? I'm glad it all happened. Not the pain or the loss, but the revelation. We found out who really matters, and we found out how strong we really are. I hugged her close, this daughter who'd become my anchor and my inspiration. You're right, I said. And that's worth more than all the money in the world. The party continued around us, smaller but warmer than before. Real laughter instead of performed charm. Genuine connection instead of calculated networking. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And after a lifetime of beautiful lies, honest was all we needed. Looking back now, I realized that Bethany's cruel toast had been a gift in disguise. To the one who always shows up broke, she'd said, intending to wound. But she'd actually defined my greatest strength. I showed up. Broke or not, humiliated or celebrated, I showed up for the people I loved. And in the end, that made me the richest person at every gathering. The money came back eventually, through legal channels and my own hard work. But the lesson stayed forever. That love without boundaries becomes enabling. That sacrifice without recognition builds resentment. That family patterns repeat until someone has the courage to break them. And that sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what really matters. Emma graduated with honors, started her own business, and carried forward the lessons learned from our darkest time. She shows up for people, but with healthy boundaries. She gives generously, but not at the cost of her own well-being. She loves family, but doesn't let that love blind her to toxic patterns. And Bethany? She served 6 months in minimum security, paid restitution to those she could, and disappeared into a quiet life somewhere far from all of us. I heard she works as a bookkeeper now, using her skills for legitimate purposes. Maybe she learned. Maybe she changed. Or maybe she's just between cons. I don't know, and I've learned that's okay. Her redemption, or lack thereof, isn't my responsibility. My responsibility is to the life Emma and I built from the ashes of betrayal. To the business that employs 20 people now. To the family relationships we've carefully rebuilt on foundations of truth. To the woman I see in the mirror who no longer needs anyone's approval to know her worth. That woman still shows up for family gatherings. Sometimes she's flush with success, sometimes she's struggling with challenges. But she's never broken the ways that really matter. Because she has integrity, she has her daughter's respect, and she has the hard-won knowledge that surviving someone's worst can reveal your own best. And that's a wealth no one can steal, a toast no one can taint, and a legacy worth more than all the beach houses money can buy. If you're watching this, chances are you've faced your own family betrayals, your own moments of sacrifice turned to shame. Maybe you're the one who shows up broke, or tired, or carrying secrets that aren't yours to share. I want you to know something: you're not alone. Your worth isn't in your bank account or your family's approval. It's in your character, your choices, and your courage to face truth even when it hurts. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever been the grace in your family, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Share your own story of family drama, financial betrayal, or finding strength in your darkest moments. And please, if this story touched you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life stories of redemption and resilience. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that showing up broke is better than not showing up at all. Because together, we're building a community of people who value truth over appearance, integrity over wealth, and real connection over performed perfection. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this journey. Remember, the best revenge against those who tried to break you is to build something beautiful from the pieces. Until next time, keep showing up, even when you're broke, especially when you're broke. Because that's when you find out what you're really made of. And trust me, you're made of stronger stuff than you know.